Over a year ago, last spring, the Savoy Automobile Museum reached out to me and asked me if I'd like to show my grandfather's 1983 Lamborghini Countach in their 4-month-long supercar show. For me, this car just isn't about the performance or style, it's about the history, the legacy, and the story of the car, its previous owners, and getting the chance to showcase it somewhere meaningful like this wonderful museum. That meant everything. Last time on Dax Moto, we explored my friend John's garage in Northeast Atlanta, and now we're picking up where we left off, headed to the Savoy Auto Museum in Cartersville, Georgia, to meet up with Ed Bolian and listen in on his Supercar Talk Tire-Side Chat. The Savoy Auto Museum is a place where car culture and history lives and breathes, rumbles, revs, and even rolls. From the rusted wreck of the Savoy car out front of the museum with a tree growing through it, to the wonderful cars on display inside. Every vehicle inside has a story, some legendary, some lesser known, but all the cars and their stories are important and intriguing. They rotate themed exhibits every few months, and the Supercar show brought together some of the boldest and most iconic road-going cars ever built. Seeing my Countach displayed there, it was amazing. They didn't just park it, they gave it a platform, a presence, and a voice. Savoy invited me not just to show the car, but to tell the story. How it was lost, how it was found, and what it really means to me, my family, and my grandfather's legacy. So here we are. That is this story. Before we jump in, I would like to thank Savoy and Ed Bolian for inviting me and letting me come out during the Supercar Talk and the car show itself. Ultimately, it was a dream of mine to share this car with the public, and it's awesome to see it on display and be a part of the Savoy Automobile Museum.
This is Seth Cathy, grandson of Truett Cathy. So we're going to talk a little bit about these cars. And Seth, you just had your story of finally acquiring the Countach on the channel. I'd love for you to tell me, talk about the early days of falling in love with cars through seeing that car in your granddad's shop.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much for your time here and your voice in the automotive industry. Thank you for Bruce for making us all come together to the show. Glad to be a part of it. My name is Seth Cathy. My grandfather, Truett Cathy, was the founder of Chick-fil-A. His first restaurant was in Atlanta, Georgia, right across the street from the Ford Motor Plant. One of the few cars, he collected over 300 cars in the last 18 years of his life. At age 75 in 1996, started collecting cars. One of those cars that he bought was the 1983 Lamborghini Countach. He bought that car in 1999 for $50,000. So he got it, bundled it with 11 other cars, bought a dozen cars from the Root family collection. The Root family's famous glass makers and Coca-Cola blotters that designed the original Coca-Cola glass bottle. And at age 8 years old, my grandfather grew up in the Great Depression, born in 1921, actually lived near where Georgia Tech's campus is now, was the first federally funded housing project in the nation, which my grandfather moved into when he was a young boy. And at age 8 years old, his first entrepreneurial endeavor was selling those Coca-Cola glass bottles door to door. So he said his most proud investment, yes, he had 300 cars by the time he passed away 10 years ago, now at age 93, but his most proud purchase of his life was a $4 bicycle that he saved up money that he helped him with his paper route. But like I mentioned, that car that I have is the 83 Countach. Out of those 300 cars, those are probably the two most memorable, in my opinion, and maybe the general public's opinions, is the Batmobile, which is still on display at the Chick-fil-A headquarters in the atrium. If you've ever had a chance to tour that, it's still on display there. And the Lamborghini Countach, also set on display many years at the Chick-fil-A headquarters. But I made a list a couple summers ago of about 8, 9 cars. I was just curious where they ended up. We had a closed auction. I mentioned my grandfather passed 10 years ago, back in 2014. 2 years after he passed, we had a big closed charity auction. And I'd say about 95, 98% of his cars were sold off in that charity auction. You had to be a Chick-fil-A owner, operator, or staff person to be part of that auction. Nobody put the minimum bid, and it was the highest appraised car part of that sale at that time, which was $300,000. Nobody put the minimum bid on it, and it sold about 2 or 3 months later to a group of 3 guys as an investment. They bought it for $275,000 back in 2016. And I started finding this out, and I knew those 3 guys bought it, and I was like, where did this car go? I was just curious. At the time, I was just curious to know where it went, because I didn't have enough money to buy the thing back. The values, like you mentioned, of these cars have climbed exponentially, even for the Countach, a lot in the past 10 years. Ended up tracking it down, reached out to John Tamarian of Curated down in Miami, and he found the car in Italy. My heart sank when I found it had crossed the ocean, gone back to its country of origin. Come to find out, it had been, after those three gentlemen sold it in 2016, went to London. They had it repainted in London. They removed the US spec bumpers off of it, returned to the original European spec, and was bought by a buyer out of southern Italy, and it was there for 4 years before John Tamarian bought it, kind of on my behalf, essentially. And he was very generous enough, and I thanked him on your YouTube video, and every time I have the opportunity, a big shout out to John Tamarian Curated. They talked about paying it forward, and he for sure did that for me. He kept it off the showroom floor for the better part of a year while I got my finances in order to purchase my grandfather's car back. So I've had it now for, I think this coming summer will be maybe 2 years since I've owned it, and it's a joy to drive. I tell people you gotta be in the right mood to drive it. You gotta take your shoes off. I got to drive my friend John's Countach this morning, and I had to take my shoes off to drive the thing because of how tight the foot pedals is. But it's an amazing car, and like you're saying, talking about the VinWiki stories, to me the most important thing is the story. Talking about a kid who grew up, he always said that the only toy he had to play with growing up was a loose tooth, and that was his brother's loose tooth. And he joked about it, but truly he grew up and he really knew, really experienced the throes of poverty, and that inspired him to become the strong entrepreneur and businessman that he became, and always had a heart for others. So I love the story of the car. Yes, it's a cool car. Yes, it gets a lot of attention, just like John's car did this morning at Caffeine and Octane. But really, for me, it's the story about this kid who grew up in the Great Depression, who, by the time he passed away, age 93, started collecting cars age 75, acquired 300 cars that he'd love to share with others. So glad to be able to share it here at Savoy, and glad to be a part of this event today. Thank you, Ed.
Absolutely. What a story.
Looking back at the past few months, I can't say enough about what Savoy has done, not just for me, but for this car. The team didn't just put it behind ropes and lights, they cared for it, maintained it, treated it like it was their own. It's rare to find that kind of respect for not just a machine, but the story behind it. They even went as far as to handle some of the maintenance, both while it was there and when we were getting ready to leave and drive it back home, which honestly blew me away. Very kind of them to help. The car's been through a lot. It's been around the world multiple times. It's been lost, found, partially restored, and now celebrated and shown. And Savoy helped write one of the most important chapters in that story. To the Savoy team, thank you very much for your passion, your hospitality, and for letting my family's legacy live on. To anyone watching, the car isn't just a Lamborghini. It's a memory, a mission, and it's far from done. There's more on the road ahead, more people to meet, more stories to tell, because some legends, they don't just sit in museums, they keep rolling down the road. Before I left the museum, I had to make good on one promise, and that was to give Mary a ride in the Lamborghini Countach. Up and down the driveway of Savoy we went, with smiles splashed across both my face and hers. It was awesome to share that experience and provide a ride to Mary in the Countach. Well, that's enough for me. Let's take a look at these beautiful shots. This Lamborghini Countach, 1983, 5000S, rolling down the road.